What's going on? Welcome to a video ranking every Clash Royale card in the May of 2025. Perhaps June if it takes very long, but they'll probably not add any cards by then. They really like evolutions because they're a lot easier to add than new cards. If you have any problems with this ranking, just know it's my opinion. If you have a better list, then make your own video. This video will be long, so I hope you enjoy. At number 119 is obviously the Barbarian Hut. It's slow and gets little value for 6 elixir. At best, you spawn a few barbarians, a terrible building that can be taken out easily, especially because of Earthquake and Void, so all structures are weaker as they can almost all be taken out for a cheaper or equal cost. If you check elixir costs, it's a waste of elixir in most cases, while barbarians are technically twice the elixir of regular goblins, so they should have twice the power. If you're wondering what I mean, like, regular goblins are 0.5 elixir each, as 4 of them are 2. So, 5 of these are 5 elixir, so, yeah. So they should be twice the power, right? They're slower and don't have enough health to compensate. Also, they can't hit air, making them counterable by a lot of spells, so you hardly get value with this card. At number 118 is the Clone. This is just a waste of elixir. You spend 3 to clone anything in a range, but the clones have 1 hit point, so literally anything in the game will destroy them. It can still be used in a few things like Skeleton Barrel, Skeleton Giant, Lava Hound, Sparky, Mega Knight, Bandit, Hog Rider, and probably other things, but there is better choices for the same elixir. At number 117 is the Three Musketeers, the most expensive card in the game, which can be taken out by Rocket, Lightning, and probably Evo Zap. Sure, you can get 3 of a 4 elixir card, so it's plus 3 elixir value, but its cost makes it vulnerable to every high damage spell in the game, along with some high damage cards, like the P.E.K.K.A. It has high health and high damage. I doubt they'll be able to stop that. You can do a lot of damage to enemy towers with 3 Musketeers, but it's not good enough value because, let's be honest, you're probably only using this once. That's what happened when I used it. At number 116, the Furnace. Similar to the Barb Hut, but instead of 3 Barbarians every 8 seconds, 1 Fire Spirit every 5 seconds with less HP and lifetime. The Fire Spirit is absolutely terrible after its big rework and after its nerfs, and the Furnace won't even help with pushes. A better structure to use would be the Cannon, which is cheaper and more helpful. The Heal Spirit is unreliable and far worse than the Ice Spirit or Fire Spirit for the same cost. Sure, the Fire Spirit isn't perfect, but it can still be used well for its damage. The moment I unlocked this card, I never used it. Literally anything can stop it, and even if not stopped, its healing isn't very good. A waste of elixir and a card slot. At number 114 is the Goblin Machine. I have a huge pet peeve with this card. It's essentially a different Goblin Giant, where instead of shooting with 2 Sphere Goblins on its back, it shoots out small rockets that do a small amount of damage for 1 less elixir, but the machine targets anything, making it easier to stop. Imagine Skeleton Giant without the huge HP, fist damage, and death damage. There's not a huge reason to use it, especially after its huge nerfs after launch. It's not the best card in the game, but I have heard it's getting more usage with its damage and health buffs recently. And number 113 is the Suspicious Bush. Think of Skeleton Barrel, but it's invisible before its first hit. It's also ground and no death damage, and spawns 2 goblins instead of 8 skeletons. And it's slower, so much easier to counter. It could be good in spell bait or log bait, but that's all the value you can get from it. Most of the time it sucks. At number 112 is the Cannoneer. Imagine an Archer Princess Tower Troop, but it has a really slow hit speed. Instead of every 0.9 seconds, it's every 2.4 seconds, and the DPS is slightly worse than 4 times the power, and with less tower HP, so I have no fucking idea why this card is used a lot. I guess it's because, it can take down tanks easier, but it sucks with swarms. But this is the second tower troop ever, and yeah, it's very underwhelming. It's a horrible introduction to new tower troops, and I don't get why you would use it. Number 111 is the Barbarians. Magic goblins, but there's 5 of them with higher HP and damage. But it's 5 elixir. Might sound amazing, but you can easily counter them with Fireball, a baby dragon, a wizard, a witch, even a log for a positive elixir trade. After the nerf, they are extremely easy to defeat, along with their speed making them easier to counter. Barbarians are actually surprisingly used in low ladder. I remember I used them from like Arena 2 or 3 whenever I unlocked them to like Arena 11. After I unlocked Mega Knight, I didn't really need him anymore as that was another card with area damage. That's a huge thing nowadays, so this card is just not that good in the meta. At number 110 is the Battle Healer. Battle Healer is just really, really, really underwhelming. It heals around itself each attack, so it could be helpful with, like, Elixir Golem, perhaps just giant high health things, or I'm not exactly sure. But other than that, this card isn't very good. Similar to the Witch, it's gotten many, many changes, but it can still be used somewhat well. I remember I tried to use it a long time ago, and it was terrible. I scrapped it and used something else immediately. At number 109, the Golden Knight. The Golden Knight is essentially a knight, however a much faster hit speed but lower HP and damage version. For 1 more elixir. A 1v1 between a knight and the Golden Knight will end with the Golden Knight dying, meaning a negative elixir trade. Its ability is terrible. Essentially makes it do a little more damage than usual and hits up to 10 things close to each other for 1 elixir. This ability sounds great, but it's almost never useful, although an easy way to almost guarantee a connection to the tower. Obviously the worst champion, as all other champions have insane abilities way better than this one. You're going to use this over Orchard Queen's Invisibility or Monk's Deflection or Goblin Sign's Heavy Splash Damage. I know it got a rework, which definitely helps the card, but to be honest, it just sounds very unuseful to me. Like, it just doesn't sound at all useful in my opinion. Number 108, the Archers. My brother really likes this card, but there is not much reason to use it. They do little damage, but with a fast hit speed, however they have low health, meaning arrows can take them out for an equal elixir trade. Could be great as a cheap distraction or a cheap support, but there are better options. And I should mention that they are the first card to have an evolution in this ranking, and it's probably one of the worst. It's not, like, amazing or anything. If used well, it could be pretty good. Most of the time, it's not going to get any value. The Archers have really low health, both evolution and the original, so it's not the best. It can be used in, like, maybe Spell Bait or some sort of cycle deck, but that's about it. At number 107, Mirror. Ever building a deck but aren't creative enough to pick the last card? Or using in Clone and want a quadruple push? Well, the Mirror exists. It can sometimes be helpful to better cycle, but this card is mainly a waste of card space. It was very broken around the Monk/Phoenix launch, but nowadays it is simple and not perfect. Especially after World Chef stealing its extra level mechanic. It's not the worst, but it's nowhere at all near the best. At number 106 is the Minion Horde. Wow, instead of 3 minions for 3 elixir, you get 6 minions for 5 elixir. While this may seem amazing for its damage, the minion's health makes it counterable from a variety of spells. Distractions, or even Baby Dragon. Baby Dragon will counter Minion Horde if unprotected. Sure, you could play Spell Bait, but this card is trash and needs a huge buff. Like it's an extra elixir, but a spell damage reduction of 60%. Because they are faster, they go above Barbarians, and they do more damage, but they have much less health. At number 105 is the Bomber. The Bomber is like the Archers, but does more damage, I think, plus Splash, but there's only one. The Wolf can survive Log and Zap, but can easily be stopped by arrows, although the Bomber cannot attack air troops to counter that, because it is cheaper than the Archers, so it will actually be a negative elixir trade for whoever uses arrows. And the only great reason to use it is either cycling or just to attack air troops. Because it can be good there and do a little damage, Bomber's not the worst card, along with its evolution being better than Archer's, but it's not amazing right now. The extra range is somewhat good, but not most of the time. At number 104 is the Zappies. Another low HP Swarm card, all it's from COC. The Zappies can stop some pushes with their electricity, but unless they're split, there's always Fireball. I don't know if it fully destroys it or not, I never tested the interaction. It's not the worst, not my favorite. I think the reason it's better than the Barbarians is just because it's one elixir less. An alright card, but I hardly use these because Electro Wizard is just better in most cases, and I hardly use that much either. In my opinion, not as bad as Archers, but aren't amazing either. They cannot take anything out stronger than the Knight, I don't believe. They can be great in log bait, as the Rascal Girls can die easily to log, and they're a little stronger than Archers sometimes. Although it's not game-changing, it can be helpful, although there is a good amount of 5 elixir cards that could work instead. It's not the best. At number 102 is the Skeleton Army. Now on paper, this card is crazy. You get 16 skeletons for only 3 times the cost of 3 skeletons. So you're getting about 2 1/3 value. However, with the new cards released mostly being spells, because of small spells, the Skeleton Army is usually a negative elixir trade, as small spells are usually 2 or 3 elixir. As well as the skeletons being weak and low HP, anything with a high health or fast hit speed can destroy them easily. They can be used better in log bait, so that's why they're a little better than Minion Horde, and they can do about as much damage as, they do less damage like each one, but they come in much more numbers. At number 101 is the Barbarian Barrel. Imagine log, but worse damage and range. But it spawns Barbarian. Too bad Barbarians are the weakest 1 elixir troops in the game. It can be helpful in some scenarios. It just can't do chip damage or as much damage as, like, the log. If you're a skilled player, you could use this right, but this is definitely the worst spell in the game. It's good for defense, which is somewhat a reason to use log, but if you want to do chip damage or you want to take out a card before they reach the bridge, or near the bridge, you're probably better off using log. It works better in most scenarios, but Barrel is not terrible in some. It's okay for distraction from, like, a Sparky, but most of the time it's better to use log. At number 100 is the Elixir Golem. Essentially a much cheaper Golem, only being 3 elixir, while the Golem is 8 elixir. However, with less HP, but a faster hit speed, and Golemites split twice. First they split into Golemites, and then they split into Elixir Mites. And your opponent gains Elixir each Golem segment death. Can be helpful. It has taken a tower a couple times, and it's almost guaranteed damage. Whenever I see it, it has taken my tower most of the time. That's why I said it has taken tower a couple of times. It's probably taken way more than a couple. However, if defeated early, it can give you an insane amount of elixir. I think it's around 7 or 8 extra elixir. So, essentially, you're getting the value of an elixir pump if you defeat it early. So, you can actually spawn a massive push from it, so it's definitely a high-risk, high-reward thing. High-risk, high-reward card, I guess. At number 99 is the Night Witch. Originally being broken before being nerfed to oblivion, this doesn't deserve its legendary status anymore, as the depth spawn is now a mechanic for all spawners. Lumberjack, Skeleton Giant, and Bomb Tower. It can still be good with certain decks, like Golem Beatdown, but isn't very helpful anymore. Mother Witch is more helpful with the same cost. At number 98 is the Wizard. The Wizard is one of the most hated cards in the game, as Executioner is just better in most situations. Although being very similar, could be great as support, as its damage shouldn't go unnoticed. On its own, it can die to a lot of things for positive elixir trade. Fireball or Mini P.E.K.K.A. can easily stop it, before it can do any damage. I do think its evolution looks extremely cool, and when the Clash Royale let you choose an evolution for free, I think that happened around the time I started playing, around August. I was almost thinking this one. Although some small nerfs made it terrible, it still looks like an interesting evolution. Actually, no, it was November, right as the Mega Knight and P.E.K.K.A Evo came out. The main problem with this card is that it's 7 elixir, which means that any building can counter it. It's competing with high DPS troops like P.E.K.K.A or Mega Knight, so it's not great there. It can be taken out like a regular giant, even if it does do a little more damage, being like using mini P.E.K.K.A. That's what I usually use to counter giants. But the thing about the giant and not this is that the giant's 5 elixir. It's it's not that big of a deal if it's countered like the cannon. So it's not like a game changer. The main problem with the Electro Giant is that it's 7 elixir, meaning that buildings can easily counter it, as the highest elixir building is 6. Along with, it's also competing with Mega Knight and P.E.K.K.A. If you compare it to the Giant is 2 less elixir, meaning that buildings don't have as huge of a negative elixir trade with it most of the time. So it's just not the best card. At number 96 is the Goblin Hut. Normally this card would be garbage next to Furnace, as they are both terrible in most situations. Well, these Spear Goblins have more HP, probably less damage, but more HP is a good thing. And it can be used much better with Log Bait. However, this card is getting a rework where it only spawns goblins when attacked, so it's now more strategic than just placing it. And now you have a few weak troops every now and then for half a minute. This is definitely a way better way to go for spawners, even though there is much bigger problems in the game for the past 9 years. Although this doesn't sound amazing, but it may be good in certain situations, even if Tesla could be better and more reliable in most situations. This part isn't in the script, but I should mention it. So the rework did actually come out, and people really like it. It's not my cup of tea, it's just I don't really like this card, and goblins I'm not even that big of a fan of. But they can be used well, and it's definitely a somewhat better choice than Tesla in some situations. Rune Giant. People hate this card because of the nerfs it got, like a balance change or two ago, but you know what I say? This card could still be used very well. I mean, it just takes more skill now, and I guess that sucks. It's still a cheaper giant that increases the DPS of 2 closest troops to it until 5 seconds after it dies. Just place your troops in front of it, or display it the normal way. Because remember, it's 4 elixir. Just use the Rune Giant and then place a Dark Goblin Skeleton Giant. That sounds like perfect synergy. On second thought, Royal Giant would work a lot better than Skeleton Giant, because it is more reliable in getting a bunch of hits, therefore the extra damage on its third hit would be used a lot more. Number 94, the Bomb Tower. From the game's launch, a tower that lobs down bombs doing good splash damage with low HP and cannot hit air. That's pretty crazy for 5 elixir, so not a lot of people did use it. Luckily, its elixir cost was reduced due to the bomber getting a rework to its elixir cost. I've tried it, and it's not my favorite, but it can be a good card against swarms, win conditions, or just as a distraction. This card can be very good against Hog Rider, I believe. I'm not extremely sure, but I think so. At number 93 is the Sparky. Sparky was the 5th ever legendary ever to come into the arena. However, in comparison, the Mini P.E.K.K.A has higher DPS with higher health and an easier to upgrade rarity, while the Sparky has worse DPS and health and harder to max rarity. Sure, it has higher range than melee, I guess, and a bit of splash damage, but it doesn't justify 2 more elixir. Can be rare with Clone or Goblin Giant, however is easily countered by Rocket or Minion Horde. Number 92, Minions. The Minions are a simple card introduced in the tutorial. They're flying, fast, kinda high DPS, but low HP. They can be good in most situations, a somewhat middle ground between bats and minion horde. Not a bad card to use. From this point, the cards kinda start getting like okay almost. This is just how I'd rank them from here. Number 91, the Giant. The Giant is an extremely basic card that's slow, high HP, but does okay damage. At Arena 1, it's a crazy helpful card, but at high arenas, it's like okay if used right. It's good at low arenas and if used with a giant graveyard deck, but I don't really love the card that much. Maybe it could be good with like Valkyrie or something, but yeah, I don't know. Number 90, Goblins. Skeletons too weak for you? Get 4 Goblins that are stronger for only 1 more elixir. A cheap, helpful card that can be very helpful for its extra troop count. Still dies to many spells, but are still a helpful card. At number 89 is the Snowball. The Snowball is a strong spell with its knockback and slowdown, plus its damage isn't bad. Less than Log, but I think more than Barb Barrel, probably more than Zap. Out of all 2 elixir cards, this is number 2. While the evolution is ignored as Zap has a stronger one for the same cycles, the Evo is really good with specific high DPS or fast cards, even if it can only be used once or twice per battle. I can't count how many games I've won with the prediction Evo Snowball at the bridge while I have a big large push coming. At number 88 is the Goblin Cage. The Goblin Cage is a very underwhelming card. Sure, you can get on some 4 elixir cards in a 1-on-1, but it's just dumb. It's a building that does nothing, but in death spawns a strong goblin. So the building is used to distract, I think? Its evolution is just okay in some situations. It's essentially a slightly cheaper Inferno Tower, but can probably only hit one thing, and spawns a goblin death. Perhaps if the Goblin Brawler has 10% extra damage along with its 10% extra health. As it is now, I've been hearing that the evolution is doing well, so I don't know. At number 87 is the Electro Spirit. This is going to be a hot take for most, but I despise the Electro Spirit. I know it's like a very loved card, but I tried in Arena 9 or 10, and it essentially was just a cheaper Zap for me, specifically against skeletons. It's gonna half and half. Like, if you want splash damage, you can use Fire Spirit. If you want slowdown, you use Ice Spirit. This Spirit isn't terrible or anything. Its reset mechanic can be great against Infernos or Sparkies, but so does the Ice Spirit. It can be good with other cheap cards, or for its somewhat good damage and slowdown. By itself, it's usually a waste of a card slot. Not the worst, but not the best either. At number 86 is the Royal Delivery. A pretty good spell. Imagine Barb Barrel mixed with Zap. Just with a kind of long drop time. Royal Recruits are pretty good in the game, along with it requiring extra elixir to stop, unlike Barb Barrel, where the Barbarian can be just ignored for the most part. It can be good in most situations, but I'll probably never use it just because, well, if I want damage, I'd use Rocket, and if I want a spell that spawns a troop, I'd use Barb Barrel, which I almost never use because Barbarian sucks, as I said. Number 85, the Goblin Curse. Imagine a poison, but it's much weaker, but has damage amplification and turns dead enemies into your side goblins. This can be a good counter to skeletons or bats. Although to stop stronger enemies, you'll need a second card to do enough damage to turn them into goblins. It's mostly situational and only works in some specific decks. Sometimes they can be a tower destroyer, but sometimes they can be a waste of a card space. Could be great with P.E.K.K.A, Giants, or Elite Barbarians. Number 84, the Fire Spirit. A somewhat reliable spirit, although its rework made it so instead of 3 spirits, there was 1. It was even stronger, although many nerfs occurred, making the card a lot worse in most situations. It's okay for its damage, but not too much for its cost. The reason Furnace is hated in the meta is because the Fire Spirit troop itself does so little damage it can be ignored most of the time, unless you're using minions or skeleton army. It could also just be because, spawners just suck in general. At number 83 is the Lightning. I have nothing too wrong with the Lightning. I would say it needs a buff like extra range to separate it from the Rocket more, as the idea is that it hits up to 3 things only, doing a good amount of damage with the medium range, while the Rocket does more damage but less range. Or perhaps an elixir reduction. As it is now, it's not terrible. It can be used well in specific situations. At number 82 is the Spear Goblins, the second best regular goblin card. The Spear Goblins are cheap and are similar to goblins, but have less health, but are ranged troops, meaning they can hit air, allowing them to take down or somewhat damage cheaper air cards. Over the years, the Spear Goblins have gotten a good amount of buffs. They are weak to almost every spell in the game. Luckily, there's no one elixir spells, so it usually leads to an equal or negative elixir trade. At number 81 is the Royal Giant. The Royal Giant is for some reason a common card, even though it's 6 elixir. This is the first card in Clash Royale to ever not fit its rarity. It should be a rare or epic. It's gotten a few buffs throughout the years, and after one large rework, the card is pretty balanced. It takes more skill than it did originally, but pays off more. A good card, although somewhat hated. At number 80 is the Elixir Collector. The Elixir Collector is people's go-to card, even if at best you get 2 more elixir from where you started. It's not lower, as elixir is very important, and even 2 more can generally win you the game. However, it can be countered with Rocket or Void or Earthquake, and it's not a defensive card or even offensive, so there's no point in it. At number 79 is the Cannon card. Well, it may sound stronger than the Cannon, but it's 2 more elixir, a medium speed troop with a defense shield, although the Cannon card shield has gotten much less interesting over the years, as many troops now have the shields, and since its rework, it's no longer strong against spells. It can be good against win conditions in certain situations. It's an okay card. It can be used well for, ship damage, I guess. At number 78 is the Goblin Gang. Imagine a skeleton army, but instead you get 6 goblins. 3 have higher HP but melee, while 3 have lower HP but ranged. This card is strong, and as it is now, it's balanced enough due to the help of guards. Although Law can take it down for a positive elixir trade, still not bad. I'd say okay, maybe a little better. Berserker. At launch and even out, the Berserker is just underwhelming to most. Though its HP isn't amazing, the main reason for using it is its high DPS, as its hit speed is quicker than skeletons. If used well, it can work kind of like a knight. It can be great in cycle decks. It's not a crazy card, but not terrible. Berserker kind of looks like a palette swap Amanda the Adventurer, if that matters. At number 76 is the Dark Prince. This room is my favorite from Arena 7 to 10. The Dark Prince has medium area damage and can charge the shield. An ability I didn't know was that when it connects while charging, it does damage all around. However, the Dark Prince isn't the greatest because of other splashing units, even ranged. I believe the ability to splash all around when it charges was removed because I've seen it in battles and it no longer does that. From here, the troops listed are, really good, including this one. At number 75 is the Valkyrie. A good troop similar to the Dark Prince, the difference is one significantly does more damage, and one has more health. The Valkyrie can't defeat most in a 1v1, but does a lot of area damage, so it's good against skeletons, goblins, or bats. Cannot hit air. However, it's a strong troop that works a lot better in the game, while the troop is a lot worse in Clash of Clans. The reason it's better than Dark Prince, because the Dark Prince is a shield and extra damage, is because the Valkyrie has an insane Evo where it spawns tornadoes. That's a crazy Evo that can work really well in most situations. At number 74, the Balloon. The Balloon is quick for its high damage, but has lower HP. If nothing is used, it will probably do 3 hits, meaning the tower is probably gone. It can be easily taken out by small spells. Its Death Bomb can be very helpful, as even if it doesn't do any regular damage to the tower, it's great with Lumberloon, Clone, Freeze, Zap, Snowball, Lava Hound, Miner, and maybe Baby Dragon. Its health is one of its only downsides, as it can be countered by almost any anti-air troops. At number 73 is the Phoenix. Similar to the Mega Minion, however, spawns an egg that will revive itself only once, but has a bit of death damage. It's not horrible, although the Mega Minion is cheaper, 1 elixir less, but the Phoenix can be used well. It would make more sense if it could respawn infinitely, but has some nerf to compensate. It would definitely separate it from the Mega Minion. Another good card that can be used well in some situations. In COC, it's a lot stronger during anything close, temporarily invulnerable. To me, this is just a higher cost Mega Minion with an ability that just makes it more annoying somewhat, but usually won't involve in nothing. At number 72 is the Royal Ghost. The Royal Ghost is like the Knight, but with a slower hit speed and less damage for the same cost. However, if not attacking for 1.7 seconds, it will turn invisible until attacking again and has area damage. It can be similar to the Knight in some decks, but its ability is novel and could be used greatly, somewhat separating it from the Knight. It can also cross the river like the Battle Healer and some charging cards. Its area damage makes it a little harder to counter with swarms. Whatever you do, do not counter this card with the Tesla. At number 71 is the Inferno Dragon. The Inferno Dragon is a slower baby dragon, but has the ability to obliterate a single thing in front of them. However, the Troop's Inferno mechanic is slow enough where it can be countered by some cards. However, if it locks onto your tower, you're probably a goner depending on how much health the tower has left. Like the balloon, it can take down your tower in seconds. However, due to its single target attack, multiple air units will destroy it almost 100% of the time. Still a good card for its good damage. The only reason it's higher than the Royal Ghost is because of its evolution. As of now, it's upcoming, but when this video comes out, it will probably be out. It's a crazy Evo that can obliterate tanks and towers for only 4 elixir. Definitely a good elixir trade. At number 70 is the Magic Archer. The Magic Archer is a range troop with higher HP than a regular archer. Although its cost, its ability is that each shot is piercing, having a 7-tile arrow length. It can be used very skillfully to damage the tower along with the troops in front of it. Its range is increased from the regular range of, I think, 5 tiles to 6. It can still be countered by cheaper cards, but can be very helpful sometimes. A good troop. At number 69 is the Skeleton Barrel. Like a skeleton army, but only 7 or 8 remain, but it's the same cost. However, they come in a flying barrel with death damage, which makes it harder to be spelled while it's in the air, but more predictable. It can be great with a giant, I think it'd be a great combo. Balloon, clone, mirror plus clone, perhaps. Although it's one of the only slow 3 elixir cards, it's still a very good card, though. At number 68 is the Earthquake, the counter to every building in the game. The card is a more expensive zap with a higher range but lower damage, and only hits ground. However, it does extra damage to buildings, meaning it can get positive elixir trades, and do damage to the tower as well. Unlike the COC version, this version does not have percentage damage, which would be a very interesting, concept, but as it is now, it's good. At number 67 is the Royal Recruits. The Royal Recruits are just a no-skill card. They require more effort from your opponent than you do. They are essentially stronger guards that come in 6 instead of 3 along with placement, being the whole arena. This card is just annoying, especially its evolution. It's definitely a no-skill card. Imagine a magic archer, but with higher HP and damage, but the arrow only moves about 3 tiles instead of 7. It can be helpful in some situations. Another ranged splash damage troop, like the Wizard, Witch, Baby Dragon, and Executioner. Sparky doesn't count because it's a very, very slow hit speed. Not a bad card. At number 65 is the Rocket. One of the most beloved spells in the game, the Rocket has a low range, long deploy time, however it does the most damage out of any spell in Clash Royale, doing 1.2 thousand damage. Sure, it does only 35% ground tower damage, but every spell does that. If you have no skill, Rocket Cycle is the way to go. Even if it's 6 elixir, it's worth it for the damage. Starting out as the best spell in Clash Royale has withered over time due to the nerfs and new cheap spells making it a C tier spell. Zap damage is unremarkable at times, but unlike Log, can hit air. It can take out everything under a Spear Goblin's HP, reset Infernos, Sparkies, and stuns by 0.5 seconds, and some troops will be so weakened by the zap that they can be taken out by the tower in 1 or 2 hits. It's definitely a worthwhile spell when unlocked for its versatility, or once you get Log or Snowball, you'll never go back. At number 63 is the Witch. Imagine the Wizard, but worse in every way. Less HP, less splash damage. I think a slower hit speed. However, it can spawn 4 skeletons every 3.5 seconds. Sure, skeletons aren't very powerful most of the time, or the years, and somehow it's still bad after 16 changes. 17 if you count the evolution. Due to the absolute power of the Witch, it's ranked much higher than it would have otherwise. It's not the most powerful evolution on launch. Evo P.E.K.K.A for sure takes that spot. This will be nerfed, but for now, it's very, very strong. Every time I see it in battle, I'm just scared, because it's almost uncounterable. At number 62 is the Royal Chef. A little worse Princess Tower, but while the Princess Tower is reliable and good enough, the Royal Chef isn't great unless it's in beatdown, as its special ability is to throw pancakes at its allies, about every 25 seconds that have infinite range, and the ally gains an extra level, which is about 10% of everything. At launch, this thing was crazy, but if a level is pretty much just 10% extra, I don't know how that's super crazy, but I guess with Mirror, it's very powerful. Imagine a level 17 golem coming from the back. Your tower's gone. At number 61 is the Graveyard. Originally from COC, similar to the Skeleton Army, but is a spell, which means it can be placed anywhere, and the skeletons come out periodically, meaning most spells are weak against it, except Poison. Very helpful in almost any deck. Splash Damage cards can easily counter it, as it has RNG, along with how much it's harder to use with King activations. Still not a terrible card, probably worse than the Miner though, although I will say it's pretty annoying as like the Royal Recruits or later on the Mega Knight. At number 60 is the Mortar. At launch, it's very similar to the Expo, however after its rework, it's mostly the card we know today. It has a slow hit speed of 5 seconds, but has a very high range of 12 tiles. So you could chip away at towers with the mortar, however ground troops will distract, but you'll need to protect the mortar efficiently for its chip damage. It does, however, have a dead zone, which means it's under the range, along with a 1-second startup. I've used it sometimes, but it's a very difficult card to use effectively as it requires a lot of skill to use right. At number 59 is the Executioner. Like the Wizard, Witch, and Bowler, where it's a 5 elixir splash damage card, but with less HP, but the shot is piercing. A mix of the Wizard and Magic Archer, the guard is better than the Wizard as its evolution is one of the best. It was originally the best evolution, but after a day or 2 of release, they nerfed the evolution knockback and extra damage at close range. It's still a good evolution, but not as good as it used to be. The next one has a much more powerful evolution. At number 58 is the Hunter. Like a Musketeer, but instead of doing good single target damage and medium health, the Hunter has lower health, a slower hit speed, but has a burst shot doing a small amount of damage, but 10 different shots. I will say, its evolution is much better than the Musketeer. Although the base card isn't amazing, it can be good if it's like really close to something. It will be crazy for its damage. A good card in some scenarios, although its evolution, well, not everyone super loves it because you have to play the Hunter twice to use it. It's crazy good, because it can basically trap something infinitely as long as the Hunter's alive. At number 57 is the Goblin Demolisher. It's just a better bomber. There's almost no difference in between the two. The bomber throws bombs with splash damage. The Demolisher is the same, however with more HP, and when it's at half health, it rushes at the tower to explode, but with its health or 5-second timer making the explosion counterable. Out of all the cards in the Goblin Queen's Journey update, the most balanced. It's best described as like a mix between the Bomber and the Skeleton Giant, as the Skeleton Giant has that big death damage, and the Bomber because it throws splash damage bombs. This card is great in a variety of scenarios. At number 56 is the Fireball. One of the first two spells ever to see in Clash Royale. It's like Rocket, but with higher range, less damage, quicker launch time, and 2 elixir less. It's great against a variety of troops. It's definitely a good spell for probably the first 4 arenas. Then maybe you'll switch it out for like Zap, because it's not like a necessary spell. It's good in most decks though. At number 55, the Mother Witch. A musketeer, but less damage and less HP. However, anything it kills turns into a hog, a weaker royal hog. A good card against cheap decks, along with rushing your opponent to counter quickly. Most skeleton cards are worse than it. It can definitely make an arena more chaotic. At number 54 is the Poison. Not too much to say on this one. It's like the Fireball, but with more range and slower, but does more damage overall. Great with minor and works well against medium or slower troops. It's a pretty good spell. I think it works well, even if it's just for like damaging the tower. At number 53 is the Goblin Giant. The Goblin Giant is a slightly stronger giant with a faster speed, more damage, and 2 spear goblins on its back who appear in death for only 1 more elixir. It's great with Sparky, as both are fast, and the Goblin Giant's a tank. It's got an evolution where at half HP, it spawns goblins. The evolution was really good, so it was nerfed, and this destroyed the evolution. After seeing the nerf, I don't fully get it. The goblin's spawn speed went from 1.5 to 1.8 seconds. This doesn't seem huge to me, especially since 0.1 second hit speed differences don't change much about a card. Why would 0.3 do anything? A little broken, but a somewhat balanced card. At number 52 is the Baby Dragon. The Baby Dragon is a reliable splash unit. Think of the Wizard doing splash damage, but with higher HP and an air unit. However, with less damage and a slower hit speed. A strong card against skeletons, minion horde, bats, goblins, and just to occupy stronger cards that attack air with its high HP, as well as balloon somewhat. At number 51 is the Firecracker. The Firecracker is like the Dark Goblin, but with a slower hit speed, however, has a large range of splash damage. So large, it can be used to activate the King Tower, and has a bit of recoil. But it's still great for log bait, but don't use it with Graveyard. It's also good because, like the Bomber, it has just enough health to survive log, which means that no small spells cheaper than it can take it out. As well as the Firecracker surviving log, which is the biggest card in the meta and probably the most popular card in Clash Royale as of now. At number 50 is the Little Prince. Like an archer, with more health, and its hit speed increases the longer it's shooting at something. It can survive Fireball, although its novel ability is to summon a Guardian for 3 elixir, essentially a knight but stronger with pushback, and summoning damage. At launch, it was the most broken troop in the game, however it's gotten a lot easier to counter due to many nerfs. It's still a strong troop, and isn't the worst champion, just not the best anymore. At number 49 is the Expo. Think of the Mortar, but shooting much, much faster, 1 tile less range, more HP, technically less damage but higher DPS, longer lifetime but 2 more elixir. Simply try to lock onto the tower and doing great chip damage is good, but since the opponent can place a bunch of stuff, you have to place stuff as well to block their stuff so the Expo can do some damage. However, it's 2 more elixir than the Mortar, so it's a little harder to defend as you have less elixir to use. At launch, the Expo was very, very powerful, being able to hit air and no startup speed. It would just instantly start shooting. Although I will say the card is very, very good. I think there is some better options, but it's not a horrible build-in. At number 48 is the Mighty Miner, a grounded Inferno Dragon with a faster Inferno damage and a faster movement speed, although the card has less health. This card would be good in some cases. Its ability is where it shines. For one elixir, it drops a bomb and digs to the other side of the map. This requires your opponent to spend more elixir, but takes forever to activate. A great card if used right. At number 47 is the Rage. The Rage is a strong card that started out with a high range but 3 elixir, changed to medium range but 2 elixir, and now is death damage but is less effective. It's a very strong combo with Elite Barbarians or Royal Giant. It's not perfect, but it can be great with other cards or to stop certain swarms. At number 46 is the Goblin Drill. The Goblin Drill is like the Miner, but spawns a drill that spawns goblins, and has damage, and shoots at a goblin on death, and 2 goblins every few seconds. The first time I saw it, I didn't know what it was at first, and my tower got destroyed in a matter of seconds. It had a broken launch, and so did its Evo, which made it a spawn 3 times around the closest thing to it. However, it's one of the worst evolutions now, as they remove the death damage to the extra times it appears. A good card for guaranteed chip damage, but not worth using that evolution. I think the only reason the Miner is a bit better is because it's more reliable and it's 1 less elixir, meaning splash damage cards can't really stop it, as most splash damage cards are 4 elixir or higher. At number 45 is the Musketeer. Musketeer is the second ranged troop you get in the game. Like the Wizard, but no area damage. Just single target with more health and more damage, and 1 less elixir. Its evolution I never liked. It's temporary and situational. Not my favorite, but the card isn't bad, and the evolution is somewhat liked. It's definitely like a C or B tier evolution, but still good. The Musketeer is reliable, and it kind of needs to be, because there is a card where there's 3 of them that isn't doing well right now, so it has to be good for that card to be kind of good. At number 44 is the Tombstone, the only high skill spawner which spawns skeletons, which may seem horrible as skeletons have low HP and low damage, but it can be a good distraction and can be great against win conditions or single target enemies. Wish it was 2 elixir, as it's not as powerful as Skeleton Barrel and technically not as powerful as Skeleton Army, but as of now, it's not a bad card. I'd like to see that rework, but as it is now, it's still very good. It's not my cup of tea, but I can see why people like it. It's a good card when used right. At number 43 is the Bats, or Bats. A must-have in cycle decks, a cheaper anti-air troop than minions, and technically the cheapest, except for, I guess, spirits. That can be great against Cannoneer, or great with the tank, as the tank soaks up the damage, while Bats doing a good amount of damage, due to the card being 5 bats. As well as them being a swarm, they could do great against, like, Inferno Tower. Minions could work as a substitute, but they are a gamble, as they can be heavily weakened for a negative elixir trade. At number 42 is the Lava Hound. The Lava Hound is the most expensive air card. It's very slow, does little damage, but explodes upon death into 6 lava pups that attack anything. Its best trait is its high health, like a Golem of the Skies, as they are both 30 housing space in COC, and technically close to 8 elixir in CR, which are right next to each other. Because technically, this is 7, while the Golem's 8. It can be great with Balloon, Skeleton Barrel, Goblin Barrel, Miner, and Clone, and probably a few others I don't know of. At number 41 is the Inferno Tower. This card is used from Arena 6 to 12 because the Hog Riders were introduced around there. Sure, it's 1 more elixir, but unlike every other cheap structures, every other defensive structure that's generally cheaper, It guarantees the Hog Rider will be defeated unless you have good placements. Sure, you can also use it against wind conditions that are more expensive usually. I stopped using it trying other buildings, but eventually decided not to have one. At number 40 is the Royal Hogs. The Royal Hogs are like the Hog Rider, but there's four of them. However, they do a lot less damage and each have the same sight range as the Hog Rider, meaning they are easy to counter if you have the building cycle. A good strategy is to split, which can be helpful in certain scenarios. They're definitely pretty good, but that's pretty much all I have to say. I did use them for a good amount from, I think, Arena 7 to, 9. They're a good card, and they're a little unpredictable. Like Royal Recruits, they're almost guaranteed damage. At number 39 is the Goblin Barrel. Spawns 3 goblins anywhere you place it. Originally 4 elixir, but the card's cost was reduced due to its weak usage. It's great in log bait, as spells are its biggest weakness. I think the reason the miner is a little bit better is just because it's more reliable. But this obviously does more damage to make up for its lesser HP. Its evolution kind of sucks, but it can be good. It's kind of just... It used to be like it would be one Goblin Barrel and then a fake Goblin Barrel that's a little weaker, but you wouldn't know which one is which. But now you do. Although, I think the one reason people still use the evolution is just because it's still 2 Goblin Barrels, essentially. This one's a little bit weaker because they have 1 health. They still do the same damage. At number 38 is the Lumberjack. A very fast barbarian with a fast hit speed and spawns Rage and Death. There's some stat changes that I don't know about, but for 4 elixir, it's pretty crazy. Its evolution is one of the best in the game, too. At number 37 is the Tesla, a simple low health building that hits air and is cheaper than an Inferno Tower for an anti-air high health building. While it has lower health and the damage isn't crazy, it's a good card that can be used well in some decks as an alternative for cannon, other than its evolution. The Tesla evolution makes it shoot out an electric ring every time it comes out of the ground that can hit ground and air, doing good damage. While it's not crazy, it does sound good. However, Evo Cannon has a beat due to its versatility. It's still a good card, even if the evolution isn't amazing. At number 36 is the Skeleton Dragons. The Skeleton Dragons are like a baby dragon with a little splash but doing high damage, and there's 2 of them, meaning they can split but lower HP. Not perfect, but a good swarm card that can't defeat Baby Dragon 1v1, but can do some damage and is good against most other troops in the game, specifically anti-air. It's kind of an uneven match if they can't hit air, but yeah, they're good. At number 35 is the Bandit. The Bandit is like a knight, but with less HP and damage. However, dashes doing double damage at 5.5 tiles range from something doing double damage. Can be good with tower destroying or just offense. Not perfect on defense, though. A good card. The reason it's this high and even higher than Lumberjack, which I think I like more as a card because it's fast with a fast hit speed and spawns a rage, is because the Bandit is very versatile if your opponent is low on elixir. Because usually that means the highest thing they can afford is like a log. And log does nothing to this card. It can still dash. And the dash won't be affected by the log or anything. It's like a Prince Charge. However, the Prince Charge is counterable. This is an insanely fast dash. Definitely a good card if used right. At number 34 is the Miner. While the Miner can be good for chip damage, spell resistance, and is a great combo with Balloon, Lava Hound, Poison, and Skeleton Barrel, it does little damage to its main target, Crown Towers. However, it can be good in 1v1s versus a few cards like Bandit, Goblin, Skeletons, even Firecracker, as it can go anywhere. I'm not fully sure why this is a legendary, as the Goblin Barrel is almost the exact same. You can place it anywhere and it spawns troops. I believe Goblin Barrel came out later, and it's more of a spell that spawns troops. However, the Miner, who's just a troop, it's a good card for distracting, Crown Towers, and doing chip damage, or as a cheap just-in-case troop. A good card nonetheless, it can be used very well. Although it is making me think, why isn't the Goblin Drill legendary? Because it's essentially a miner that does death damage and spawns goblins. That just seems like a legendary to me. At number 33 is the Dagger Duchess. Okay, so imagine an archer tower, but does more damage with a faster hit speed, but has limited ammo, an amount of 9, and restocks when not shooting every zero point 0.9 seconds. It's good in some scenarios, but horrible if it doesn't do enough damage to a tank, or if many placements overwork it, like enemy placements that just make it so it shoots a bunch and has nothing to shoot with, so it shoots super slowly every zero point 0.9 seconds, and it's not very good in those situations. At number 32 is the Skeletons. A card that can be used well due to its great cycling. Skeletons can stop specific troops, even if it's just for a while. It's essentially like a fire spirit, but instead of doing a good burst of damage once, it essentially does a lot of damage, generally, but it's littler, but it's 3 times, I guess? But it's just for how long the skeletons survive. The skeletons can stop specific troops, even if it's just for a while, like troops that can attack, like wind conditions, or just specific troops, like even Sparky, probably, and Bowler. Well, kind of Bowler. Personally, I use guards over these any day, but skeletons can be helpful in many decks due to being much cheaper, especially due to its evolution being very strong, even after its nerf. While skeletons can mostly be ignored, Evo skeletons cannot. At number 31 is the Battering Ram. This card is simple. A charging ram, but only does damage to buildings in its path. Spawns two barbarians afterward, which can do something depending on the situation. It isn't my favorite, but it's good in cycle decks and has a strong evolution. Although its health nerf hurt its usage a bit because the evolution was way too strong, I think. It's definitely pretty hard to use right, because pretty much anything over 2 elixir can stop it, most likely. At number 30 is the Flying Machine. Like the Musketeer, but flies. This means it's harder to deal with than the Musketeer. It has less HP and range, but if it connects, a tower is going to take some damage. A good way to describe it is kind of like a baby dragon, however, single target, more damage, but obviously less HP to compensate a bit. At number 29 is the Ice Golem, the highest skill card in Clash Royale. While it may seem terrible being a slow troop with low HP that spawns a slowing small area damage when destroyed, this card is one of the best in the game, due to it being great as distraction, flanking, drawing out, and the cheapest win condition. While its Death Cold is useful, the card is mainly used for its cheap walking. While it technically is the cheapest win condition, you could also count the wall breakers, I guess. At number 28 is the Elite Barbarians. This card doesn't make too much sense. It's essentially 2 barbarians instead of 5, at the time 4, but they are faster, stronger, and healthier. They were buffed into the strongest card of all Clash Royale, but were slowly nerfed into a strong but counterable state, insane with rage. They're essentially 2 lumberjacks, but don't spawn a rage, but there's 2 of them, and they're 2 more elixir. I think. I don't really know how to exactly say these cards. They're great for splitting and with rage. At number 27 is the Archer Queen. The Archer Queen is a mid-troop for 5 elixir. However, its ability is its main reason for using her. The ability turns her invisible for 3.5 seconds and do 1.8 times the damage, well, the hit speed, while invisible. This ability used to be the strongest of all champions back at their launch, but after some nerfs, the ability is mostly balanced. However, still insane for only 1 more elixir. For some reason, Clash Royale, I don't think they've ever nerfed an ability's elixir cost. Like, they changed the Golden Knight to, 1 to 3, or the Monk to 1 to 3, or the Little Prince to 1 to 3. Maybe not the Golden Knight, but it's just, because they're very powerful, but they never nerf them or change them. At number 26 is the Hog Rider. A simple fast win condition with a high sight range, but does good damage to towers with an insanely fast first hit. Like, you can place, like, 7 elixir worth of stuff in front of it, and it can still hit the tower. I'm positive the only change to this card was a slight damage nerf. One of the most popular cards in the game. Used in the most popular deck in 2017, Hog 2.6. It's definitely a really good card, but some are a little better. At number 25 is the Dark Goblin. Dark Goblin is a faster goblin card, with a very fast hit speed, making it helpful straight out of the tower. Its only weakness is its very low HP, however your opponent must have fast reflexes in order to stop him from taking at least one shot. Graver Logbait, a good card. It is one of the best evolutions. However, it got a minor nerf of 5% less damage, but if you remember when evolutions came out, because the Dark Goblin didn't have one, they gave it 10% more damage. So how does this destroy it? I don't really know. If it did 10% extra damage, then the nerf right after it got an evolution, like a huge buff, but at 5% less damage, I don't fully get how that would destroy the card, but it did. It's not an amazing evolution anymore, but it's still very good. At number 24 is the Electro Wizard. A wizard that does less damage overall, but stuns enemies for half a second and can hit 2 troops at once. Along with its spawn damage. It can be okay in some cases, but if used right, it can be a great card. If you don't know, the Ice Wizard only slows down enemy troops. That's a very helpful ability, but it doesn't, like, reset them. So that's why this card is great, as Infernos and Sparky are pretty big. I've never really used this card, but it's a card I could see myself using if I have it upgraded enough or something. At number 23 is the Cannon. The Cannon is simple. 3 elixir for a good enough defense, shooting a cannonball every second. It used to be 0.9, but they nerfed it because of the evolution. It's not a huge nerf, though. A simple card which can be used to counter Hog Rider if used right. The most iconic building, and my favorite. Its evolution is currently the best in the game because of its versatility. I did see it got a nerf last balance change, where it's, the range per, like, barrage, well, barrage is on total, right? Per barrage shot, I guess, is, nerfed by a bit. 20% range nerf, I guess. The Archer Princess is like an archer for the cost of 2, but has a much longer range, about 10 tiles, meaning it can shoot from the bridge and its splash damage. The damage is minor, but if it's placed next to the bridge, its first hit time is so fast that you have to have the reaction time to a maximum. You're not killing this troop until it hurts your tower. It can be good defensively and its problem is its health, making it susceptible to getting defeated by almost every other card, including Log, its main problem. I'm pretty sure they actually invented the Log just to destroy the princess, because that thing was ruling the game when it first came out. I think the reason it's better than Dark Goblin is that while the Dark Goblin is a little easier to counter, it still has to, like, walk, because its range is less. But the Princess, it's almost guaranteed chip damage, unless your reflexes are, like, of a saint. I don't know why I said saint. Saints have really fast reflexes of a monk. Clash Royale reference. At number 21 is the Goblinstein. Imagine Little Prince, but the champion and its guardian are already there. Except the guardian's a giant, but I guess the ability is only when the first of the 2 units are alive. This can be used great for split lane, and that ability, which is to summon a mass area damage to kill skeletons, bats, minions, goblins, all for 2 elixir. Sure, I guess Log is 2 elixir, and that could be similar, but because of how the Goblinstein works, it could be very far apart. This is definitely a really useful champion that can work in a lot of different decks and deck archetypes. Definitely very good. At launch, it was very broken, but now it's, Less broken, I think it's mainly just useful. At number 20 is the Skeleton King, a champion that works kind of like a horseless Dark Prince, but slower, more HP, but less damage. However, his ability is to spawn 2 to 16 skeletons around him for only 2 elixir. However, there's a total of 14 enemies that need to be defeated in order to get the best out of the 2 elixir. Skeletons can be overwhelming with clone skeleton army, skeletons, skeleton barrel, and tombstone. Well, you could say, oh, it's just a graveyard, but it's only, you can't like choose where it is, so it won't be right next to a tower, it'll be where the Skeleton King is. But, if you think of like the skeleton army, it's pretty similar, it's about 16 skeletons at best. It's pretty much the same, just 1 elixir less, and you have to like wait a bit until it does a lot of damage before you can use it to its max potential. It's very good. Sure, Goblin Side can counter it very easily, but Goblin Side is 1 more elixir, and it's getting less popular. Skeleton King is just a good choice. At number 19 is the Mega Knight. This card is a great synergy with my favorite card, Mini P.E.K.K.A. I've been using it since Arena 11. Although it's considered the most hated card in Clash Royale, as this card is annoying as can be, even if it can be countered by 2 spirits / skeletons, Mini P.E.K.K.A, Knight, P.E.K.K.A, Inferno Tower, Skeleton Giant, and a few other stuff, this card, it requires a lot more skill from your opponent than who places it. However, it's still a strong card nonetheless. At number 18 is arrows. Arrows are the first spell in the game, as they are simple to understand visually and mechanically. It's similar to Zap, but with higher range, 3 ticks of damage, doing higher overall, but 3 elixir instead of 2, and no 0.5-second stun. It's not amazing at taking down tanks, but overall, it's a good card that can take down many pushes. You could consider it like a better Zap, just for 1 more elixir, which is still reasonably cheap, and it can take down archers, firecrackers. It does generally more damage than the log, even if the log is a little more versatile because of the lower elixir cost. At number 17 is the Skeleton Giant. The Skeleton Giant, or the Giant Skeleton as it says in the card picture, is the strongest giant in all of Clash Royale. Its stats and Death Bomb are easily the most powerful. It's kind of similar to a P.E.K.K.A and a Giant combined. That's why most people don't consider it a Giant, as it's more P.E.K.K.A than Giant. It's pretty much a mix of them, because it's 1 elixir in between both of them. And it has good stats, good strength, very good health, and the main reason for using it is the Death Bomb. It can hit anything, so, it's not amazing in most situations. If the Death Bomb gets to the tower, it is pretty game-breaking. I don't love this card, as I said, my favorite card's Mini P.E.K.K.A, and that's kind of similar. They're both single target and high damage, but not the exact same, I guess. It can be used greatly in plenty of scenarios. It's definitely a very good card. I'd say it's above Arrows, just because Arrows is getting nerfed a lot. It's a very strong card, even if it's just used to counter Mega Knight, as it does that pretty well. At number 16, the Ice Wizard. Like the Electro Wizard, but less damage and no resetting. However, has the powerful ability being slowing down enemies by 35%. While the card isn't used for its damage, it's used for good support and defense against high damage troops. It can be very good in plenty of scenarios. At number 15 is the Monk. The Monk and Phoenix were the biggest troops in Clash Royale until they nerfed both of them. The Monk is now 5 elixir instead of 4, but eventually got a health and damage buff. It works like a Knight and a Mini P.E.K.K.A combined, as the third hit does high damage and knockback. Its main power is with its ability, which makes it reflect all projectiles and 80% damage reduction for 3 seconds, for 1 elixir. The Crushable team may be on some drugs, because that's insane. The ability should be at least 3 or 4 elixir, a strong mini tank with a powerful cheap ability. At number 14 is the P.E.K.K.A. Beware the Almighty P.E.K.K.A. Originally from COC, being so beloved it has a son in this game and a dog named Lassie in COC. A large death machine that does high damage with very high health. However, unlike the giant, attacks anything and is single target. A powerful troop that scares some opponents, a deadly but powerful card. It can counter Mega Knight as well, if that matters to anyone watching this. One thing I should mention is that its evolution at launch was probably the most broken evolution of all time. However, it got nerfed a lot, and it's still very powerful. It wasn't very powerful when the nerfs happened, but then they gave it a little buff, and yeah, it's not like amazing, but it does what evolutions kind of want to be, be a little extra power, nothing too helpful. At number 13 is the Knight, the first card you ever use in Clash Royale. It's the most basic card in the game, being at medium speed, having medium HP but high max level, and a quick hit speed doing good damage. It can be countered, but overall is a strong, cheap melee ground unit. This is one of the top 13 cards in the game, and a good part of it is that it got an evolution. The evolution at launch was easily very broken, maybe even more broken than P.E.K.K.A, honestly. But after a heavy nerf, and probably a few other nerfs, it's definitely more balanced. The reason it's still a very, very good evolution is mostly just because you have to play the Knight a bunch of times before you can use it, and the main evolution is the Knight, and the Knight's just a good card that most people love. Pretty much everyone, honestly. At number 12 is the Ram Rider. The Ram Rider is like a Hog Rider, which means it's almost guaranteed to damage the tower as it has a very fast first hit speed, and is fast, and a win condition. However, obviously buildings can stop it. It can charge instead of just going as fast as it can immediately, and it can slow down enemies while moving. If paired with Freeze, Miner, or Rage, it can take a tower unless you think quickly with the right cards. Top tier for sure. Prince. This troop is the most heavily buffed troop in the game, having its damage, health, hit speed, charge range buffed with only a few nerfs. A single target strong troop, and the first to charge. It can break havoc, and if it gets to your tower, you're in a bad situation, as pretty much it does 900 damage. At number 10 is the Mega Man. Do I, need to explain? It's the only cheap spell-resistant air troop and can survive most spells in the game, but dies in a 1v1 with, minions and even bats. Mega Minion also moves slower and hits slower than the Knight. It's still a strong card, although the last few are better. The reason it's better than the Knight, even though it has a slower hit speed and probably less damage, is because it's flying. Pretty simple. At number 9 is the Freeze. For only 4 elixir, stop any push or counter push in a good range with spawn damage. The only thing limiting it is that the monk counters Freeze, and it's a pretty expensive spell for the most part. The highest elixir spell is 6, so Freeze is close, so can't be used too much. Is great with Balloon, Ram Rider, Prince, Skeleton Barrel, Miner, Lumberjack, Graveyard, and Hog Rider. As you heard, this is a lot of good support, but this could also be considered, this is about the same much as the clone, so is the clone better? Well, no. The Freeze is just a lot more effective and helpful than the clone. The clone gets almost no value most of the time. Freeze is almost guaranteed value. At number 8 is the Boss Bandit, the best champion as of now. The champion is a stronger bandit for double the cheap cost, but has the ability to go back 6 tiles, turn invisible, then dash forward at whatever it was aiming at. A crazy ability that can evade a bad situation or to do extra damage to your enemy. You can only use it twice, but it's insane because it's 1 elixir. I don't get it. Why are the most powerful abilities always 1 elixir? Surprisingly, Elite Barbarians and Boss Bandit Both are very fast, high damage, 6 elixir cards. The only reason this is better is because, well, it's a champion at launch. Champions at launch are pretty much always overpowered. So, obviously, this is a very good card. It did get a small nerf to its health, at least in the proposed balance changes, but it's not going to do anything. At number 7 is the Tornado, a spell that moves anything to its middle, doing good damage, 2 for 2 ticks. After a nerf, it is only 1 tick. This is still a crazy good card, as the Tornado moves anything. Well, I guess not anything. It can't move, like, buildings or spells or stuff, but it can move troops. Unlike other troops that deal knockback, it does not have a limit to what troops it can move. If that guy's getting a little close, move it back and defend. It's also the inventor of king activations. Maybe not the inventor, but it was the thing that really popularized it, as before it was probably very, very hard to do, or impossible, honestly. Meaning you can get a third tower to shoot nearby enemies early. Sure, new troops could do this alone, but it was far and few between. The best of the best spells. At 6 is the Ice Spirit. It's a simple spirit. It does a bit of splash damage, but its main mechanic is that it slows anything it attacks for 1.3 seconds. While this may seem weak compared to Freeze, which stops for 4 seconds, the Ice Spirit is much cheaper, only being 1 elixir, while Freeze is 4. It can be amazing with cycling, and better yet, it's the easiest rarity to max out in the game. Its evolution was bad at launch, being one of the worst, but the evolution was reworked, making it 2 cycles instead of 3, but only short freezes only twice instead of 3 times, doing a bit more damage. I found out these were actually separate, but they were right next to each other in changes to it. Now it's a better evolution and reasonably balanced. A top tier card. At number 5 is the Golem. The Golem has a long spawn time, but the reason is that it's the strongest card in the game. It has the highest of HP, being around 8,000, and does large damage, and splits into 2 smaller golems upon death, and all 3 have def damage. Sure, buildings are a weakness, but the absolute power of this card is unmatched. Overspending with the Golem is almost unnecessary to save your tower for either destruction or high damage. However, Golem has to be supported, which is difficult as it is 8 elixir, the second highest. Takes an insane amount of skill, but is stat-wise the strongest troop in the game. If you have a Golem at the bridge, you probably can't stop it easily. At number 4 is the Archer Princess Tower. The Archer Princess has been in the game since the beginning. While she does small damage, her fast hit speed and high tower HP makes the tower a reliable defense that no tower troop has managed to top. A top tier card. At number 3 is Guards. Like the Knight, a simple cheap ground card that can hold off pushes. For some reason they are getting a damage nerf, which probably won't worsen the card by much. It has come out and I haven't noticed anything about the card. This may be due to the guards becoming more popular than the Goblin Gang, but it also may be because it can counter the Prince and Boss Bandit, and they don't like that. I don't know, they don't like the game being balanced. If it ever had an evolution, it'd be for sure to shields, as the shield is its main mechanic. At number 2 is the Mini P.E.K.K.A. If you don't know, back in Arena 2, my go-to card was the Mini P.E.K.K.A. because of its high DPS. While the Knight has more health at max level with a faster hit speed, Mini P.E.K.K.A. does way more damage with only a good amount of health and has great synergy with certain cards. I didn't love expensive cards, but one stood out to me as it had great synergy with Mini P.E.K.K.A. Mega Knight has low splash damage and high HP, but Mini P.E.K.K.A. has high single target damage but with low HP. It's a great push, although there is other synergies that could work better. This pair has moved me from Arena 11 to Arena 21, and maybe more eventually. And fun fact, I'm now at Arena 22. At 1 is the Log, obviously. easily the best card in the game. The versatility is unmatched, and the guaranteed knockback makes this the best card. Got goblins, dark goblins, firecrackers, princess, goblins, or goblin barrels specifically, or skeletons attacking you. A simple log will stop them. It's great against swarm cards, and it's even good against other stuff. It does good enough damage to take out some stuff, and it has knockback, so in case a P.E.K.K.A.'s coming and you have very little elixir, a log isn't terrible if it has low health, or you don't really have any other option. But to delay it a bit, maybe your time is about to end, or I don't know, you're probably going to lose anyway if you don't, but a simple log will stop them. Sure, it can only hit ground, but there isn't too much reason for it to air other than minions, minion horde, and balloon. There's still a little reason to use other small spells, but the go-to for most decks is the log. It's a higher damage zap that does knockback, but only hits ground for the same cost. It's essentially a rocket, but so cheap, it's always versatile. I don't get why I wrote that. It's not really similar to the rocket that much, but oh well. I guess because it's known for its good damage, and that's kind of the point of the rocket. If the rocket didn't do as much damage, you wouldn't use it. As it is now, its stat-wise is balanced. However, there isn't as popular competition. It doesn't need a nerf, but the other 2 or 3 elixir spells need a small buff instead. If it ever got an evolution, infinite rolling distance for sure. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Remember, this is just my opinion. If you think log should go around 50, that's okay. If you think Electrosphere would be number 1, that's your opinion. It's not mine. This is just my experience from playing and stuff. If you want to see ranking videos on random things I'd like to talk about, subscribe. I will say I probably will never make a ranking video of this length, or at least on iMovie again, because while iMovie's free and I appreciate it, or at least I think it's fully free, it takes when you want to record something, you have to wait like 30 seconds for actually recording, which would be fine, but I have to retake and record over 119 different voice lines. So yeah, this video took a while. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed, and see ya.